All right, so here we are back in our 000 web host. Let's go ahead and fire up our file manager and take a look at what we have. So I'm in my public HTML here. I'm going to right click on index.html and click view. Here we are. You can see we created this navigation bar in the last video. We were talking about creating a spoof website called GameStoop. Maybe this is something that employees can register games, and we'll have a page on here called um, games or something, and they could click on that and people can purchase from our site. We have a contact us section here. Right now that contact us connects to a database, and what it does is through that connection we're creating a table. So let's take a look at that code, and that's done all in this contact.php code that we had already going on. All right, so if we look at this code, we got a bunch of usernames and passwords. We can check if there's a connection error. This right here is used to connect. We're saving off a SQL statement in this SQL variable. Then we check if the query we're passing in, we could literally just take this chunk in here and just paste that inside of here, but instead we created this variable to store all of that. So we're going to use this connection to run a query, and if that query runs successfully, that's what this true is checking, then what we do is we print this out to the screen. Else we print out that, hey, we have an error, and we are getting an error, right? We're getting that error that says that we already have a database. All right, and then we close our connection. So let's save this off, and now let's take a look. So what I'd like to do is I would like to get some information back from the database, right? So we've connected to our database, we've got an error that's letting us know that it's created. Now what I'd like is, I'd like to maybe send some information over, right, from this contact page. So right now I have a form. It's called label first name and label last name, right? And I'm thinking about this for a second. Yeah, we'll send a first name, we'll send a last name, and yeah, you know what? Maybe we'll send one more item, which is, well, let's start off with these, and then we can update our form and send more stuff. So let's pay attention to this for a second. We have a name form here called fname, and we also have a last name here. Now, before we even get into this, let's just take a look at what's the SQL statement and how do we run it where we actually can just connect straightly to the database and send some information over. So for that, we're going to have to go into our contact.php page. So I'm going to right click this and duplicate. I'm going to go to this public HTML folder and I'm going to fire up this contact.php. Now let's say, you know what, I have no idea how to do that, right? But I'm willing to learn. So let's go to our friend DuckDuckGo here and just say PHP. Here we go, SQL create table. Let's see what comes up with that from my previous search. So here it is, my favorite site, W3 Schools. And here's what we looked at last time, PHP create tables. And off onto the side here, it says MySQL insert data. So let's go down a little bit. And I'm going to click next. And I'm using this MySQL, right? This improved MySQL, right? Now, the main difference, though, so you know, is this is improved upon this, and PDO is used for a variety of, you can use it for a couple of different browsers, but the code isn't that much different, right? So if you look at that here, here's the object-oriented approach, which I like because I come from a Java C# world. And so this is kind of where I stay in that realm, because a lot of times I probably won't be using PHP. I'd use actual Java or maybe C# to pass these commands around. And so let's take a look at this. So we can see here inserting data. And in this object-oriented approach we're looking at, we have this here. We have a username, we have a password, we have a database name, we've got this going on, we're checking for a connection. And then here we go, look at this statement, SQL. And the SQL statement to insert data in is insert into the name of the table and a bunch of different, our first name, last name, and email. So let's go ahead and take this line and let's rework it so that it works for our code. And I'm going to go painstakingly through each thing again inside of our PHP here. So sometimes though, notice it'll error out, like it'll refresh. So you want to click save often so that it knows you're still there. So we have one SQL statement here, and here's another SQL statement. Now this is going to cause a problem because now we have two variables with the same name. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to name this one SQL insert data. And what we're going to insert into is the my guest. Remember, we created a table called games. I'm going to copy that. I'm going to paste that here, right? And I'm going to leave this because I don't mind that error popping up because I want us to sort of see that. So actually, let's do this. I'm going to steal this, cut that, and I'm just going to go below this, and I want to go above where connection is closing. Because we know that this is where our table is being created, and we're checking if that's true. So I'm going to paste this here, and we'll create an if statement to see if our connection already exists. We'll do that later. But right now, we just kind of want to, we're going little by little, chunk by chunk. And I don't expect you to understand everything as we go through this. But um, the more we pick at it and the more we look at it and dissect it and the more research you do on your own, you're going to be a rock star because your vocabulary is what helps you in the interview to get the interview. Whether you meet somebody or whatever, your portfolio is what gets you the job. All right, so here we are. And I want to go and take a look at our database. So I'm going to go to Tools here, Database Manager, and I'm going to just go ahead and fire this up and take a look at what we have inside of our games database. And by having this open, we can watch it in real time, actually send the data over. So let's expand our database, which is this guy right here. Come on, come on, don't let me down. There we go. And then I'm going to select games and I'm going to click on structure once this pops up. And we have a title and we have a genre. Okay, so those are two fields and they both start with a capital T and a capital G. So we need to make sure that's correct. So I'm going to jump back into my code over here and I'm going to insert into games title and genre, right? So let's save this. I'm going to actually get rid of email for a second. We're only going to focus on those two fields. And the values that I'm pushing in are a game that I miss a lot, and a lot of friends worked on this. So I'm hopefully going to get this out within the next century on the PS4. But Leo versus Robots, and the genre is adventure game. All right. So I'm going to save this again, just letting web host know I'm alive and that I'm still here. So we have this variable that's storing the SQL command that's inserting into title and genre. Now, mind you, this is probably going to give us an error because they are capital. And ideally, when you're creating these names, so we create a table, you're supposed to make them lowercase, by the way. So this is actually bad convention that I taught you earlier. But we're going to continue with the bad convention. So worst case scenario, your boss slaps you on the wrist and say, hey, you got to make all the tables lowercase. And then you go back and you recreate this and all that good stuff. All right, so we're passing in these two values. All right, so let's pop over here. And the next thing we need to do is check, is our connection query, that's this, does this chunk of code actually work? And if so, we're going to create a new record of the game name. Else we'll spit out an error. So I'm going to copy this. I'm going to go in here and then we're going to change those around too. Now, mind you, we are actually going to check if, so this is another thing is our connection name isn't called con, it's called connection. Remember we created that up here? This is the connection. So what we're going to do is check if our connection, and we're going to send a SQL query in, and it's this statement here. If thus does not return an error, we're going to spit out to the screen that this record was created successfully. If it wasn't, we're going to get an error that says maybe the record already exists or that it can't connect to our database. So I'm going to save that. Now, I might have to pause it for a minute. We're going to try this right now, but sometimes it takes a few times before it takes a little bit for all of this to update the database, all this other stuff through host. So let's see how lucky we are today. So I'm going to hit submit. And we have new record created successfully. Now what we should have done here, and I'm going to run it again so you could see the error. In front of this, it says new error created successfully. Just outside of here, I should have threw another thing up here and just inserted. Actually, we could have done that, I think, just by doing something like this, I believe. Dot, and then just have a break here. But I think we need to make sure that that's in quotes. Yeah, I could have just copied it from right here. All right, so let's paste this here and let's get rid of that space. I don't think it'll cause much errors, but we don't want to um, something like this, something like that. And maybe we'll do another break behind this because if we're going to get an error now that we've already got that field created. So I'm going to save that and let's refresh this and we get an error. So I'm going to go back. This is what I meant by it starting a little bit. So we have on line 46, syntax error with a dot. So maybe we can't start this here on line 46. Let's get rid of that. Yeah, so we might have to append this to the front of maybe another line. So let's take a look at this. Let's refresh this. It already exists. Let's figure out a way to get another break somewhere. So let's throw this behind this here. Maybe we'll echo right here because we know this works. All right, so let's save this. Let's refresh. New record created successfully. Error creating table game already exists. We are now, okay, here we go. Bear with me, guys. Here we go, save, refresh. Beautiful, now we got another line. Took me a million tries, but we got that. So now our errors are spinning out. Now here's the fun part. Let's take a look inside of our games database to see if we have a record, right? So if we browse our database and look at this, we have one record and we have many records here. It just keeps spitting out the IDs because I keep running it. So let me show you that too, because I ran it 4 times. So I'm going to delete these. Let's delete this one. But you can see that we added Leo versus Robot adventure game as the genre. We don't have a description. So maybe we can go ahead and add that as well. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this record here. And let's go back in. And that field, let's see where that field is. Here we go. Let's go to our structure here for a second. We have a field called description, and it's a capital D. I'm just going to copy that and be a little lazy. And I'm going to say here, let's edit this, comma, description, and we can just write another comma here. The best word spelling game on the market. We should, I guess, best word adventure game on the market. I don't know. Well, so let's fix this up for a second. Here we go. Boom. Save. And because Zero Web Host is being great to us, and we go back to our database here, I'm just going to click Browse for a second. Click on Games. Boom. The best word spelling adventure game on the market, even though my grammar isn't perfectly correct. All right, so I'm going to end this video here, and then the next video, maybe we'll do a little HTML, CSS, or we'll come back to this as well, and we'll make it so that we can, from our contact HTML page, we can actually type some actual stuff in here, and we'll change this around from contact to video game first name thing and then description.